Huh. Fools. They thought you were finished the moment they whispered behind curtains and placed bets on your downfall. They smirked in unison when you stumbled, thinking you were just another flame flickering before the wind blew you out. But what they didn't realize was that some flames don't die. Some flames learn to burn colder, quieter, until they melt steel. And now you're not a person to them anymore. You're a consequence, a phantom echo of every lie they all told, and every dagger they smiled while driving through your back. You gave them every chance to walk away. They stayed. You showed them mercy in silence. They interpreted it as weakness, and now they run, not out of guilt, not out of regret, but out of terror, because they've realized too late. Nothing is more dangerous than the one they buried, who dug themselves out with their bare hands and remembered everything. Their world is collapsing like dominoes, and your name is the wind knocking it all down. You don't even need to raise your voice. Your presence alone sends a chill down their collective spine. You've become the myth that haunts their phone screens, the shadow that lingers when they think they're finally alone. It's poetic, how the liars are now trapped in a story they wrote for you, and every page burns their name deeper into its curse. You didn't need to shout your vengeance. You let your silence rot their comfort, let your success slit their delusions open from ear to ear. You never became louder, you just became impossible to ignore. And that's when the fear really sets in. You walk into rooms now, and conversations die mid-sentence, eyes scatter, breaths hitch, because they see what's behind your smile, something they can't fake, can't manipulate, can't buy or destroy. They see the monster they built. But here's the twist. You're not angry anymore. You're focused, and that's worse. Because rage is predictable, but calm vengeance, that's what haunts them in their dreams. You don't need to chase them. They trip over themselves, trying to escape a war you no longer even participate in. They're battling ghosts, but it's not a ghost. It's you, alive, evolved, unforgiving. It's funny. When you were on your knees, they laughed like gods. They paraded your ruin like a trophy, but they forgot something vital. Real gods don't fall. They descend. You didn't collapse. You were summoned. The version of you they tried to destroy, that was the draft. This is the final manuscript, polished, sharpened, unapologetically brutal. You turned your scars into armor, your silence into strategy, and your solitude into supremacy. They now speak your name like it's cursed, because every time they do, something in their fragile little empires trembles. You were never the villain. They just couldn't stomach your evolution. They called you dangerous when you stopped bleeding. For them, they labeled you unpredictable when you stopped explaining yourself. But deep down, they know you didn't change. You just stopped complying. And when someone stops complying with their control, that's when the panic sets in. That's when the rats scatter. That's when they start to realize they never had power, just illusions. Illusions you allowed until you didn't. And now look, they're running, spinning tales of victimhood, hoping the world forgets the dirt under their fingernails. But you don't care about clearing your name. You care about letting the storm do its work. The truth doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs time. And you're the clock that never stops ticking. Every second that passes, their grip slips. Every moment you thrive, another crack forms in their carefully constructed facade. You're not just rising. You're erasing their version of the past, one terrifying success at a time. They tried to play chess. You became the board. They wanted you as a pawn, You reshaped the game until every piece moved at your command. It's a beautiful reversal. They called you unstable, unworthy, unhinged, and now their words are trembling in their throats because they know. The only unstable thing is how fast your power grew when you stopped letting them define you. You were once their secret joke. Now you're their open-ended threat, not because you seek revenge, but because you became something that no one, especially them, can predict anymore. Your silence isn't empty, it's loaded. Every room you enter carries history, and they feel it pressing against their ribs. They can't match your pace. They can't fake your resilience. They're so busy looking over their shoulder, they don't see what's coming next. But you do, because you've seen this pattern before. People only fear the monster they created when it refuses to die. And you've made peace with the monster. You feed it discipline, you train it with purpose, and now it walks beside you, calm, calculated, cold. They thought your fall was permanent, that you'd vanish into obscurity while they polished their masks and posed as saints. But masks crack, saints sin, and you're the reminder that truth always has a way of dragging itself back to the surface, even if it has to claw its way through hell to get there. You didn't just survive, you rewrote survival. You redefined pain into weaponry. And now, every step you take is a funeral for every lie they ever told. You don't even need to strike, you just are. And that is enough to make them pray for invisibility. But invisibility won't save them, not anymore. Because you've become the moment they dread, the mirror they can't smash, the story they can't rewrite. You are the pulse in every hushed conversation, the tremor beneath every plan they make. You've taken everything they did to you and turned it into fuel. Now you're not chasing closure. You're delivering consequences, strategic, relentless, unapologetic. They don't hate you because you're evil. They fear you because you're awake, because you now operate without hesitation, without approval, without shame. You answer to no script but your own. You don't seek permission, you take territory. And when you look at them now, there's no fire in your eyes, just calculation, just the cold, unshakable knowledge that they've already lost. The game's not even being played anymore. You already won the moment they realized their power had an expiration date, and you were it, and the beauty of it all. You never needed revenge. Just the right distance, just the right silence, just the right moment. And now that moment is here, stretching out like a shadow over everything they tried to build. You don't need to shout. They do that for you, screaming into their pillows, into their group chats, into their illusions. But no one listens now, because the world saw the transformation. The world saw the fall and the rise. And they can't deny what you've become. You're not the person they betrayed. You're the result of that betrayal, hardened, weaponized, dangerous. And with every step forward, they lose ground. They feel it in their bones, and deep down, beneath the lies and the panic and the smirks they wear like armor, they know you're coming. Not with swords, not with screaming, but with that unnerving calm that speaks louder than any war cry ever could. You don't march, you drift, like smoke through a locked room. Inevitable, invasive, impossible to cage. They can't. Brace for your arrival, because they don't even know what to look for anymore. The version of you they betrayed is long gone, cremated under the weight of their games. And what rose from those ashes doesn't knock. It enters, and when it does, the walls themselves flinch. You used to crave explanations. closure, even apologies. But now you're not in the business of giving people the chance to explain why they threw you to the wolves. You just watch. Watch how they panic in your silence, how they sweat in the absence of your validation. That's the real punishment. Not pain, not fury, irrelevance. You stripped them of what they thrived on, your reaction. Now they're addicts without a fix, trembling for attention they'll never get again. Your absence is the guillotine, and their pride, it's bleeding out by the second. They whisper now, not because they're hiding secrets, but because they're terrified of speaking your name too loud. You've become that unspeakable force that reshaped everything they thought was stable. You were the earthquake in their hierarchy, the anomaly in their pattern, the one outcome they never predicted, because people like you aren't supposed to come back stronger. They're supposed to stay broken, haunted, easy to manipulate. But you learned the system. Then you burned the manual. Now, they wear their guilt like perfume, hoping to mask the rot beneath. But guilt doesn't fade. It stains. And every time they paint themselves as innocent, you rise more powerful from the contrast. You're not seeking revenge. You're exposing imbalance. You walk into their carefully curated chaos and flip the table with a stare. You don't need to justify your rise. Your existence is the justice. You're not screaming about what they did. You're letting your presence scream for you. And the irony, it's deafening. They used to see you as a threat only when you were close. Now they fear you even from a distance, because distance doesn't dilute your power. It magnifies it. They stalk your shadows online. They eavesdrop on whispers of your success. They pretend to be unaffected, but every win you collect drags them deeper into the pit they dug for you. And the more you evolve, the more their lies age like milk in sunlight. Because time isn't healing their reputation, time is eroding it. One truth at a time. And you don't lift a finger. You just are. That's the new war. No swords, no fire. Just your shadow, bleeding into their legacy, corrupting the false image they built on your silence. You've weaponized patience. That terrifies them most. Because it means you're not in a hurry. It means you're calculating, intentional. It means the longer they breathe easy, the closer the reckoning gets. And there's no louder sound in the world than a clock ticking when you know it's counting. Down your own fall, the tables didn't turn. You flipped them without warning, without mercy. Now they're crawling through the debris, clutching titles and false narratives, begging people to see you through their old lens. But that lens shattered the day you rose without their permission. You didn't ask for respect. You demanded silence, and you got it. Their voices don't reach you anymore. Their mockery, their rumors, their desperate little jabs, white noise in a world that no longer revolves around them. You became the gravity now. Every orbit bends toward you. Even their retreat is a form of surrender. They tell themselves they chose peace. But the truth, peace never chose them back. They weren't silenced. They were outclassed. You didn't win by playing dirtier. You won by playing smarter, cleaner, louder in your silence than they ever were in their performances. You turned the arena into a mirror. And in that mirror, they saw themselves for what they are. Cowards with loud mouths and no spine. There's beauty in it. Watching the ones who broke, you scramble to rewrite the past. Terrified of the future you've built. They don't even fear what you'll do to them. They fear how little you care now. That's the ultimate power. Not dominance, detachment. Because you've moved so far past them that their hatred now feels like applause. Every insult a standing ovation in disguise, every smear an acknowledgement of your threat, and every lie just another rope they wrap around their own neck. And still, they watch, through fake profiles, through silence, through mutual friends. They need to know what you're doing, who you've become, because curiosity eats them alive. Not love, not nostalgia, curiosity. They want to see if the storm they set in motion finally settled, but it didn't. You didn't calm down. You became the eye of the hurricane, still on the surface, devastating beneath. You're not chasing storms. You are one, and no one survives a storm by pretending it's over. They don't get it. They think they can out-talk you, outrun you, outmaneuver you, but you've stopped playing the same game. While they were busy staging petty dramas and forming alliances based on bitterness, you were evolving in silence. You learned to move in ways they can't predict. You mastered the art of making chaos look like control. And now every step you take echoes like prophecy. You walk into rooms and people either follow or flee. There is no middle ground anymore. Only gravity or escape. They're terrified of what you'll do next. Not because they expect violence, but because they expect results. That's what shakes them. The idea that you'll keep rising, smiling, succeeding, while they suffocate on the ashes of their lies. They've built their entire identities around your fall. So your rise, it doesn't just threaten their ego, it erases their purpose. You were their villain, and now you're the main character in a story they can't rewrite. That's what keeps them up at night. You don't need to prove your worth. You proved it when you didn't break. You proved it when you chose the high road and paved it with silence. You proved it every time you stayed composed while they cracked under the weight of their own insecurities. And now, the same people who mocked your struggle pretend they've always supported your climb. But you remember. You remember every empty stare, every fake smile, every hand that only reached out when they thought you had nothing left to grip. And that memory, it fuels you, not with anger, with clarity. You don't carry grudges, you carry names, quietly, strategically. You don't expose them, you let them expose themselves. And they do, over and over, desperately trying to stay relevant in a story that no longer includes them. You were the lesson they refused to learn. Now you're the chapter they can't skip. And still, they run. From mirrors, from memories, from the version of you they never saw coming. They pray you won't retaliate, but you won't. You don't need to. Their paranoia is punishment enough. Their fear of your indifference is more savage than any revenge you could deliver, because nothing screams "I've lost" louder than obsessing over someone who no longer speaks your name. You've become the silence after the storm, the kind that makes people scan the horizon and wonder if it's really over. But it's not. Not for them, because storms don't end for the guilty. They linger, they follow, they whisper reminders when the room goes quiet. And you've become the whisper. You've become the tension in their smiles, the tremor in their arrogance, the memory in their mirror that won't fade. So let them run. Let them scatter like insects under light. Because wherever they go, they'll carry you with them. Not the version they remember, but the version they helped create. And that's what they'll never outrun. You didn't need revenge. You became it. You didn't seek justice. You embodied it. And now the reckoning doesn't come with noise. It comes with footsteps. yours. They hear your footsteps now, not because you're stomping, but because everything else has gone silent. The laughter has died, the whispers muted. The chaos they once orchestrated now feels like a symphony played underwater, distorted, meaningless. Their empire of mockery has collapsed into dust, and that dust is choking them. You're not approaching them, you're above them. And they feel it, like gravity shifted in your favor. Like every breath they take is borrowed from a world you now control. You don't speak, you don't threaten, you don't shout from rooftops. You just exist, and that's what crushes them. Because they finally get it. They didn't break you, they sharpened you. Their betrayal wasn't your end, it was your initiation. And now, every time they blink, they see flashes of the weapon they forged, the one they never thought would turn toward them. You were the soft soul, the quiet force, the one they mocked for having heart. But now, your heart beats like war drums, cold, precise, unforgiving. They should have buried you deeper. They should have made sure the ashes never moved. But they didn't. And now they watch you rise with a silence so terrifying. It rewrites the room. The people who used to pity you now stare in awe. The ones who betrayed you now hide behind forced smiles, hoping you won't bring up the past. But you don't need to bring up anything. Your evolution speaks for itself, and the message is clear. You don't forget. You just evolve so far past them that they become irrelevant footnotes in your legend. You weren't made in peace. You were molded in fire, and not once did you beg for mercy. You embraced the burn. You let it carve the weakness out of your soul. And now all that remains is steel, cold, reflective, unshakable. They stare into you now, hoping to see the old version, the one who would have folded, forgiven, pleaded. But that person is gone. All that's left is the reckoning, walking, breathing, smiling with a serenity that promises consequences they can't measure. They still try to rewrite the story, still try to dress their villainy in prettier language. You changed, they say, as if that wasn't the goal, as if staying small for their comfort was a virtue. You didn't change. You unveiled. You shed the skin they buried you in, and emerged with a clarity they can't fake. They had power once, but only because you let them. Now that you've reclaimed your throne, they're scrambling to prove they were never the enemy. But the silence between you speaks louder than any apology ever could. You never wanted to be feared. You wanted peace, understanding, fairness. But they mistook your grace for weakness. They took advantage of the empathy you offered, mistaking your calm for permission. And now that you've withdrawn it, they call you cold. They call you dangerous. And maybe they're right, but not in the way they think. You're dangerous now because you don't need them. You're dangerous because you no longer care to correct the narrative. You've surpassed the stage of defending your truth. Now you embody it, and the truth is brutal. It doesn't apologize. It doesn't negotiate. It reveals. You're not angry anymore. Anger was a phase. You're awake now. You're aware of every hand that let go, every knife in the back, every fake smile. And instead of running from that knowledge, you've weaponized it, turned betrayal into blueprint, pain into polish, loneliness into leverage. You walk alone now, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, because you've learned. The quieter the circle, the louder the empire. They don't see you cry anymore, and that scares them more than your rage ever did. Because people can handle a broken soul, They know how to pity that. But a soul that's healed itself, that's terrifying, that's uncontrollable, that's the type of power no one can claim credit for. And that's exactly who you are now. Untouched, unchained, unreachable. Their words bounce off you like stones thrown at a mountain. Their games fall flat, irrelevant in your atmosphere. And still, they try. Little jabs, passive-aggressive silence, desperate attempts to reclaim the spotlight in your story. But you've dimmed them. You don't play tug-of-war with ghosts. You've learned that closure isn't something they give. It's something you take. And you took it the moment you stopped looking for explanations. The moment you realized their betrayal wasn't your fault. It was their reflection. You were merely the mirror that showed them what they were too cowardly to confront in themselves. Now you are the consequence. The living, breathing answer to. Every time they asked, "What are you going to do about it?" This is what you did. You survived. You thrived. You silenced rooms just by walking in. You turned your name into a frequency only real ones can hear. You didn't seek revenge. You became undeniable. And that's the justice they never saw coming. You're not trying to make them regret. You're making yourself unforgettable. There's a difference. Regret fades, but the memory of your glow-up, that haunts, because it reminds them that they had front-row seats to your downfall and still missed the fact that it was your rebirth. Now, they're outside the gates of your empire, pressing their faces to the glass, hoping to be remembered, even if only as villains. But you've moved on. Your story doesn't need them anymore. And deep down, they know it. You don't walk around shouting your victories. You don't need to. The shift in their energy whenever you enter the room says it all. You are proof that you don't need a platform to make an impact. You are the platform. You carry the storm wherever you go, and the forecast never lies. Anyone who tries to cross you again will find out quickly. This time, you're not giving warnings. You've retired from diplomacy. Now you let the results do all the talking. And what glorious results they are. Everything they thought would destroy you became your arsenal. They said you'd fall apart, so you became unbreakable. They said you'd vanish, so you became unforgettable. They said you'd beg, so you became the one people now beg to be around. The tables didn't turn. You flipped the damn room and built a castle from the rubble. And now you rule, quietly, decisively, without asking for permission. Let them run. Let them rot in the echo chamber of their own guilt. Because you're not chasing them. You're not explaining. You're not waiting for closure. You are the closure. You're the final chapter in a book they thought they were writing. But you held the pen all along. They see that now. And no apology, no revision, no redemption arc can erase the truth. They were part of your story, but they'll never be part of your future. You are the storm that grew teeth, the silence that learned how to bite, the soft soul that turned its scars into armor. You didn't ask to be dangerous, but when they threw you into the fire, they forgot one thing. Some people aren't meant to burn. Some people become the fire.